I never thought our marriage would come to this. For years, I believed we had something special, a bond that few people manage to sustain over time. But that night, as we sat at the dinner table, my wife Emily set her fork down, took a deep breath, and said something that hit me like a punch to the stomach. "Michael, I don't know how to say this, but I don't think I want to be intimate with you anymore." I froze at first. I thought she was joking, but her tone was serious, almost cold. I tried to laugh it off to ease the tension, but her expression didn't waver, as if she had rehearsed that line 100 times. "What do you mean, Emily? What are you saying?" I asked, trying to process her words. She crossed her arms and looked away, avoiding direct eye contact. "It's nothing personal. I don't feel like it anymore. I'm tired. You know, the routine work, all of it, is not about you, it's about me." At that moment, a mixture of confusion and rejection washed over me. What did she mean, it's not about me? We were married, we've been together for years. How could she decide something so important without even discussing it with me first? I tried to compose myself. "Okay, I understand that maybe you're tired or stressed, but this is something we can work through together, don't you think? Maybe we can take a break, go on a trip, do something different. We just need to talk about it." But she shook her head almost dismissively. "Michael, it's not something a trip is going to fix. I really don't want this anymore. I think you need to respect how I feel." That sentence hit me again. Respect how she felt. What about how I felt? My wife, the woman I had shared my life with, was essentially telling me there was no longer any room for me in a vital part of our relationship. I didn't want to turn it into a fight, so I decided to approach it calmly. "Emily, please help me understand. And what's going on? Did I do something wrong? Did I stop doing something you need? I really want us to work through this together." She sighed again, this time with impatience. "Michael, I already told you it's not about you. I've just changed. People change, you know. I don't see why this has to be such a big issue." The calm I was trying to hold on to began to slip away. "Not a big issue. Emily, we married. This is part of what connects us as a couple. How do you expect me to accept this without at least trying to understand the real reason?" "I already gave you the reason," she shot back, her voice hardening. "I just don't feel like it anymore. It's that simple. If you can't accept that, then that's your problem." I stood up from the table, my heart racing and my stomach churning. I didn't want to yell, didn't want to lose my temper, but the way she talked as if this didn't matter made me feel invisible, as if my feelings didn't carry any weight. I went to the bedroom, trying to think clearly. I'd always believed that problems in a marriage should be solved through dialogue and understanding, so I resolved not to give up. Maybe she was going through something she couldn't express, something that was making her so distant over the next few days. I did everything I could to reconnect with Emily. I tried surprising her with special dinners, flowers, and even planned a weekend getaway at a spa she'd always mentioned wanting to visit, but none of it seemed to work. She then me with a forced smile, then went back to scrolling on her phone or watching her shows alone on the couch. I started noticing other things. Emily, who had once been affectionate and attentive, now seemed like she was in another world. She spent more time on her phone and talking to me whenever I asked her something. Her answers were short, almost dismissive, and she always managed to steer the conversation away. It was as if everything else mattered more than I did. One night I decided to bring up the issue again. "Emily, I know you said it's not about me, but something's changed between us. I just want to understand what's happening." She rolled her eyes. "Michael, please, we've talked about this already. I just need space. Space for me?" I asked, my voice tinged with frustration. "It's not like that," she said, sounding tired. I just want things to feel lighter." "Why do you have to keep bringing this up?" "Because I care about you, Emily. I care about us. I can't just ignore the fact that you're pulling away," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't respond. Instead, she picked up her phone and started scrolling again, effectively ending the conversation that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I felt a gaping emptiness. What else could I do? I wasn't asking for something unreasonable. I just wanted us to go back to how we used to be partners again, companions. But it felt like to her none of that mattered anymore as the days went by. I couldn't shake the sense that Emily had checked out of our marriage. I started reflecting on everything that had been happening, even things I had overlooked for years. Emily relied on me financially from the beginning of our marriage. I wanted to be a supportive husband, someone she could count on. So I took on most of the financial responsibilities. She often said she needed to focus on her personal growth. But looking back, I realized that growth never actually happened. I started questioning whether she was with me for who I was or simply for what I could provide. That thought gnawed at me, but I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to accept that the woman I loved might be using me. Even so, I kept trying. I thought that if I gave her more time, she'd change her mind, that she'd realize how much I cared. But with every passing day, she seemed more distant, more indifferent. It was then that I made a decision. If Emily didn't want to see me as her partner anymore, I couldn't keep being just a provider. I decided that if she wasn't willing to share her feelings with me, I wouldn't carry the weight of our marriage on my own. After that disastrous conversation, I decided it was time to try something different. If the problem was monotony or routine, maybe I could break the cycle and bring something new to our relationship. I'd always heard that keeping the spark alive was important in long-term marriages, so I thought that might be what was missing. I started researching ideas to spice things up. I admit I was never the bold type when it came to this, but I was willing to do whatever it took to win Emily's attention back the following week. I went to a specialty store for couples. It was discreet, but I still felt my palms sweating as I walked in. The clerk was friendly and helped me pick out a few popular items for couples trying to break out of a rut. I bought a few toys, some provocative lingerie, massage oils, and even a game that promised to spark intimacy in a fun way when I got home. I hid the bags to make it a surprise. I carefully prepared everything, lit candles, put on soft music, and decorated the bedroom with rose petals, something I knew she had always found romantic when Emily came home from work. I invited her to dinner, which I had cooked myself. It was a simple dish, but made with care. She seemed surprised by the effort. "Wow, Michael, what's going on? Are you trying to win me over with dinner?" she joked with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "No, I just wanted us to have a special night. You deserve it. We deserve it." She accepted the dinner, but she seemed distracted, checking her phone between bites. Still, I didn't give up. When we finished, I invited her upstairs. "I have a surprise for you," I said, taking her hand. "A surprise?" She raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. When we entered the bedroom, she looked around and saw the setup I prepared for the first time in weeks. I saw a spark of interest in her eye, but it quickly faded. "This is nice, Michael. But I've already told you I'm not in the mood for this, Emily. It doesn't have to be rushed. I just want us to reconnect. How about we start with a massage? No pressure, just relaxation." She sighed but agreed. I grabbed the massage oil and started massaging her shoulders. At first, she seemed to relax, but after a few minutes, she began glancing at her watch and picking up her phone as if she was impatient. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my tone calm. "Yeah, it's just I have to wake up early tomorrow. I don't think I can fully relax knowing that it felt like no matter what I did, she always found an excuse that night." Once again, she turned her back to me in bed and fell asleep. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out where I'd gone wrong. In the following days, I tried changing my approach. I started taking better care of myself, buying new clothes, dressing more sharply, and going to the gym more often. It wasn't just to impress Emily, it was also to rebuild my own confidence. When she noticed, she commented, "You're taking care of yourself more these days. Is there a special reason?" "Yes. I want to feel good about myself, and I also want you to see me as the man you married," she just shrugged. "You already look fine the way you are. You don't need all of this." Her response disheartened me, but I kept trying. I suggested we do something together like dancing or watching a bold movie to set the mood, but again she turned me down, citing excuses like, "I'm too tired," or "I'm not in the right headspace for that right now." One night, I decided to use one of the games I had bought. It was simple, with questions and challenges meant to bring couples closer together. I tried to make it fun, but her reaction was completely disheartening. "Michael, please, this is so silly. We don't need this." "It's not about needing it, Emily. It's about trying to enjoy ourselves and reconnect." She sighed and stood up. "Look, I know you're trying, but I've already told you I'm not in that place. You're pushing for something that's just not going to happen." Her words hit me hard. "Something that's not going to happen, is that it? You've already decided there's no room for intimacy in our marriage anymore, Michael. I don't know what else to say. I think you're expecting something from me that I just can't give right now." But why, Emily? Why can't you? If something's bothering you or pushing you away, please just tell me." She shook her head and left the room, leaving me alone with the toys and games I had bought. I felt humiliated and frustrated. Why was I being treated like this? It wasn't as if I was asking for something unreasonable. I just wanted our marriage to work, to be happy again. But at that moment, I began to realize that maybe the problem wasn't me. Maybe what was happening was much deeper than I had imagined. After that night when Emily left me alone with all my failed attempts, something inside me started to change. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without feeling a mix of humiliation and frustration. It was as if every effort I made to save our marriage pushed her further away, making me feel like I was the only one who still cared. In the following days, I kept to myself, watching her closely. I stopped trying to please her, stopped planning surprises, and gave up on seeking any connection. I simply stayed quiet, reflecting on everything that was happening. What once seemed like love now felt like a facade. It felt like I was living with a stranger who no longer saw me for who I was, but only for what I could provide. That's when I noticed a pattern I had ignored for far too long. Whenever Emily needed something, whether it was money, help with a problem, or an expensive gift, she knew exactly how to act. Sweet and caring, but as soon as she got what she wanted, she would revert to being cold and distant, treating me like I was nothing more than a functional piece in her life. I remembered all the time she'd said, "You're such a generous man, Michael. I don't know what I'd do without you." Words that once filled me with pride now felt like manipulation. It wasn't genuine gratitude. It was a way to keep me tied to the idea that she needed me. But deep down, did she love me? Or was I just the provider of her comfortable lifestyle? With these thoughts swirling in my mind, I decided it was time to put an end to it. I couldn't keep humiliating myself to save something that by all rights should come naturally in a marriage. More than that, I couldn't continue to support a relationship where I was treated like an ATM. It was time to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. That evening, I waited for Emily to get home and sat in the living room. I called her over for a talk when she came downstairs and saw me sitting there with a serious expression. She looked suspicious. "What do you want to talk about, Michael? We've gone over this so many times," she said, crossing her arms. "Exactly, Emily. We've talked about this over and over again and gotten nowhere, but today I want to speak seriously. No more beating around the bush." She rolled her eyes and sat down on the opposite couch as if she were bracing herself for something she didn't want to hear. "Look, I've spent the past few weeks trying everything to salvage what we had, to understand what's going on between us, and you know what I've realized? I've been trying alone. You just don't care anymore." "That's not true, Michael." "I do care, just not in the way you want." "Oh, really? Then explain it to me, Emily. Tell me how you care, because from where I'm standing, it seems like you're only here because it's convenient. Because I handle everything, pay the bills, keep this house running, and provide the lifestyle you enjoy. But when it comes to being a partner, you've completely shut me out." Her eyes widened, clearly caught off guard by my firm tone. "You're exaggerating, Michael. Just because I don't want to be intimate doesn't mean I don't care about you. This is way more complicated than you think, is it then? Explain it to me. Help me understand, because all you've done is shut down and treat me like I'm a stranger in your life." She was silent for a few moments, avoiding my gaze. "I've told you, Michael, I've changed. Things aren't the same anymore." "Yes, you've changed, and so have I, and today I've realized that I'm tired. Emily, I'm tired of being treated like I exist only to support you, so I'll be direct from now on. Things are going to change." She furrowed her brow, confused. "What do you mean, change?" "It's simple. I'm not going to support you financially anymore. I'm not going to fund your whims, your shopping spree, or your expenses. If you don't want to be my wife in every sense of the word, then I won't be the provider you expect me to be from now on. It's every person for themselves." "You're joking, right?" She let out a nervous laugh. "You know, I can't afford to cover everything on my own." "No, Emily, I'm not joking. And you know very well that you can handle yourself. You always could, but as long as I was doing everything for you, it was easier to let me carry all the weight. This is ridiculous, Michael. You're punishing me because I don't want to have sex with you. What kind of man does that?" "No, Emily, this isn't punishment. It's a reaction. I've spent years trying to make this marriage work, believing we had something special. But now I see that to you I'm just a source of money and comfort, and I'm not going to accept that anymore." She stared at me in silence, a mix of anger and disbelief in her eyes. "And what do you expect me to do? Quit everything and go work some random job? Humiliate myself?" "I expect you to take responsibility for your life, Emily. That's all I've taken responsibility for mine, for years. Now it's your turn. If you don't see me as a partner anymore, then I won't keep sacrificing myself for someone who doesn't value me." She abruptly stood up, throwing her hands in the air. "You're unbelievable, Michael. After everything we've been through, you're treating me like this, like I'm disposable. No, Emily. I'm just treating you the same way you've been treating me for months now. It's your choice. Either you decide to truly be in this marriage and act like my partner, or we go our separate ways. But one way or another, I'm done sacrificing myself for someone who doesn't appreciate me." She didn't respond. She just stormed out of the room, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I stayed there for a while, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. Relief for finally speaking my truth, and sadness because deep down, I knew that conversation might be the end of our marriage for the first time in a long time, though. I felt free of guilt, free of a need to please someone who didn't care about me anymore, and in that moment I decided it was time to start putting myself first. After that conversation, things between Emily and me were never the same. Not that I expected some dramatic change on her part, but deep down I held on to a sliver of hope that our talk might ignite something in her, a desire to fight for our marriage. Maybe instead the opposite happened. Our already strained relationship grew even colder in the days that followed. Emily barely spoke to me. She spent most of her time locked in the bedroom or glued to her phone. As if my presence was nothing more than an annoyance. On the other hand, I began to disconnect entirely. There was no longer any reason to keep trying. For the first time in years, I realized I wasn't hurting anymore. What once caused me anguish and pain now felt like a confirmation of what I had already known. Our marriage had ended long before that conversation. I stopped caring about her reactions. I no longer asked how her day had been, stopped trying to please her, and no longer sought any form of connection. It wasn't out of resentment or vengeance. It was simply a natural detachment. I had spent all my energy trying to save something that clearly only mattered to me. The household expenses, which I had solely borne for years, were now split between us. Predictably, Emily did not take this well in the beginning. She tried to argue, claiming I was being insensitive and unfair. But when she realized I wasn't backing down, she began making excuses to leave the house more often. She said she was thinking about spending some time at her parents' house, but I knew she was already planning her exit. A month after that decisive conversation, Emily called me into the living room and, in a cold tone, announced, "I think it's better if we separate." I simply nodded. There was nothing left to discuss. "Okay. When do you plan on leaving?" I asked calmly. She seemed surprised by my response. Perhaps she expected me to beg her to stay or try to convince her otherwise. But at that moment, I had already made peace with the idea that our marriage was over. "I'll go to my parents' house this weekend. I've already packed some things," she said, her tone distant. "All right, if you need help with the bags, let me know," I replied, maintaining my composure. When Saturday arrived, I watched Emily leave the house with her suitcases. She didn't say much, and I didn't feel the need to prolong the goodbye. I simply wished her good luck, and she walked out the door without looking back as her car turned the corner. I felt an enormous weight lift from my shoulders for the first time in years. The house was silent. It wasn't a heavy silence, but a comforting, almost liberating one. Little by little, I began to adapt to my new routine without Emily. I rediscovered things I had set aside because of the marriage. I started cooking for myself again, something I had always enjoyed but had abandoned. I returned to hobbies that brought me happiness, like playing guitar and reading books that had been gathering dust on the shelves. The solitude I once feared became an ally. There were no more fights, demands, or frustrations, just me, my space, and my peace. As for Emily, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had moved back in with her parents and eventually found a job to support herself. Some mentioned that she had regrets, that she missed the stability we had. But she never reached out to me, and I never felt the need to learn more than that. Our time together had ended. And I bore no resentment through this process. I learned that solitude isn't the opposite of happiness. On the contrary, it could be an opportunity to rebuild your life and find meaning in the little things. Today I live peacefully, I have my home, my freedom, and above all, my dignity. My marriage to Emily was a lesson, painful, yes, but necessary. And now I can say with certainty, sometimes the greatest act of self-love is letting go of what no longer serves you.